welcome to the 2024 food season at the British Library. My name is Polly Russell and I'm the founder of the food season, and I work with this amazing team, Angela Clutton, Melissa Thompson and Joe Allen. We are thrilled. We are thrilled about this evening. The food season tries to bring together all manner of food events. So we talk about food politics, food history, food writing, which is what all of today is about. Anything to do with food, we try and showcase it at the British Library with some of the British voices, the best voices in food. I want to thank all of you for being here today and to thank Mila, our sponsors, as well, for supporting the food season. So this evening is, we'll admit, a bit of an experiment. We've never done this before. It's definitely a big team effort in terms of this team, by which I mean, if it goes brilliantly well, Itamar gets all the credit, and so does the panel. If anything goes wrong, it's all Angela's fault. No, no, it's going to be absolutely amazing. We've got the most incredible panel here, and we've got this wonderful MC in the house, Itamar Srulovich. Itamar, as so many of you will know, he's the chef proprietor with his wonderful, gorgeous wife, Sarah Packer, of Honey & Co., some of the best restaurants in London. He is the most beautiful food writer. He writes for the FT, he writes for The Guardian and other places too. He loves words, he loves food, he loves ideas, and so he is absolutely the perfect host for tonight. Over to you, Itamar.
Thank you. So can we continue this? I'm enjoying this bit a lot. You know, this is the fun bit. So thank you so much, guys, for joining us. We will thank all of these guys profusely later. So let's keep them hanging a little bit. You know, there's one thing that my marriage taught me is to withhold. It's true. We have an amazing group of people who are immersed in food and words. And I was thinking about, you know, pretty much every text that we read will at one point reference food because it's such a big part of our experience, our human experience. And I think a lot about what food does when we read it, or mentioning of food, what it does to us when we read it. And I want to read a tiny little bit. It is an excerpt from 15th century trial. It's a testimony. I'm going to read it to you. It's not my usual reading material, but we are in the British Library. Listen to this. At about 17 hours, 12:30, the above-named defendant with two other men was eating in the tavern of the Blackamoor, near the Church of the Magdalene, where I'm employed as a waiter. I brought him 8 cooked artichokes, to wait 4 cooked in butter and 4 in oil. Then the said defendant asked me which were done in butter and which in oil. I replied, smell them, and you will easily know which are cooked in butter and which in oil. Thereupon he flew into a rage, and without further words seized an earthen plate and flung it in my face. It hit me here on the left cheek, wounding me slightly. Then he got up and snatched the sword of one of his companions, which was lying on the table, perhaps with intent to strike me. But I got away from him and came here to the office to file a complaint. So this is a really just kind of like a one short paragraph. And, you know, it could have been anything, you know, if it wasn't about food. It could have been about anything. But the food, I feel, the mention is so central to it, and it brings up so many things. You know, it tells us about the season. It's artichoke season. It tells us about, you know, the great Italian divide of butter and oil. It tells us, I feel, a lot about the defendant, who's called Michelangelo Merisi. We know him as Caravaggio, the painter, who famously had, he was a murderer. That was his, you know, he was famed for murder, and it tells us about the place, which is beautiful Rome in the 15th century. So for me, just taking that dry document and having this kind of like little food story interaction, you know, that ended up with a, you know, plate on the face and a wounded waiter and, you know, artichokes all over the place, I assume, just brings it to life and really sort of takes me as a reader to that place in a way that nothing else can do. I think this is the power of food and writing. And we have here, again, amazing people who are immersed in food and in words and in culture. And we're going to hear their choices of food words They're going to read it for us. We're going to have a short discussion after each one. And then you guys will have questions. So far, so good? We should start, right? Let's start. Okay, so I'm reading the bio because I don't want to forget any tiny detail. Our first reader is going to be Aji Akokomi, who is the father and culinary director of the founder and culinary director of restaurants Akoko and Akara, one of the most talked about restaurants in London right now, combining influence from the Afrique region of Nigeria, Senegambia, and Ghana. With local seasonal British ingredients, Aji's restaurant invite diners to embrace and understand the unique flavors and cultural significance of the dishes they serve. Earlier this year, Akoko was awarded a Michelin star. Fancy, fancy. And Aji's restaurant have been described by Condé Nast Traveler as reshaping the African dining experience in London in unprecedented ways. Aji, over to you. I think your bit is going to talk about this, but please.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm super happy to be here and pretty much to talk about, book. And I've chosen this book because it inspires me so much. I remember when I was actually going to open a restaurant, I was looking for a book that is actually concentrated on African food. And the one I found, and it's been so useful, is Zoe's Ghana Kitchen. This book I'm gonna read from page 6. New African cuisine is by now the understood shorthand for a new wave of African gastronomy, steadily gaining recognition from the global food community. I want to push all cooks and arbiters of taste in this world to see and use the beauty of West Africa's varied and enriching ingredients and flavors in inventive new ways while supporting Black-owned farming and agriculture, particularly on the continent itself. Zoe, now, when I first wrote this book, I was compelled to balance tradition with newness. Traditional recipes remixed for the modern kitchen. I still and will always look back to tradition to understand what is new, borrowed, and what can be reimagined, hoping to bring an ever wider audience into the fold of new African cuisine. The African food revolution I yearned for back in 2014 has well begun with fervor, panache, and explosive flavor. An army of chefs on the continent and in the diaspora across the globe have a new approach to cooking foods from across Africa, reimagining, reinventing, and pushing forward what is still the last frontier of food. And this book was my early contribution to that cause.
Amazing. So this, yeah, definitely. So this felt to me, when I read it, it felt to me like a battle cry, like a call to arms, and I think this was written in 2014,
yes.
Yeah, so how did you feel when you read it then? Like, was this, did it give you that?
And it was that push that it gave me, because I'd been thinking about, I'd been going to, lots of other restaurants, didn't quite find, sort of find an African restaurant or any African restaurant I could take my friends and colleagues to, and I really was keen to actually bring West African food to the fore. And in my research, it's pretty much reading lots of other books, books from chefs from all over the world. And I just wanted to find, pretty much concentrate on books from African writers, particularly writing about African food. And I found these and, pretty much thought it was actually going to be just recipes, I've seen that and all of that. But it was that, pretty much that introduction, a prophecy, pretty much that actually really grabbed me and pretty much kept me going, that you got to make this pretty much prophecy come alive.
But I mean, you fulfilled that prophecy.
I think we have.
No, there's no, you don't, it's a fact now.
I believe it's a fact now. It's a fact now. Yeah.
It's amazing. And she does write about the newness and tradition.
That's right.
And that kind of like balance, which is actually so important when we come to tradition, to keeping traditions alive. They have to sort of update themselves. And this is something that you were very conscious in your work, in your restaurant.
And in my work, and that's really important. And pretty much I think to pretty much create, showcase West African cuisine, it's really important to understand tradition, how, aunties, the grandmothers, pretty much recipes passed down, how they've pretty much, cooked it to understand the flavors, the techniques, and also the ingredients really pretty much. And I also believe that it doesn't just stay there, that it needs to be the continuation of that creativity, that invention, but inspired by tradition and pretty much all the recipes that's been handed over. Not a lot of people actually sort of agree, like, well, my mom wouldn't cook it that way, pretty much by Africans themselves. But it's also pretty much educating, them that it's unnecessarily changing it, but it's just showcasing it, making it available to all, pretty much. And yeah, and that's what we've succeeded. We're doing in Akoko.
Succeeded,
We're succeeding to do in Akoko.
But I think
Akara
this,
well.
for a piece of writing, or, I'm sure it's many things, but as far as, the impact of a piece of writing, it's quite a huge deal.
It's really a huge deal.
Yeah.
There's so much about that in this book that, I keep going back to it over and over again. Pretty much, Zoe herself was pretty much trying to find herself, pretty much, looking into her African cuisine, went to Ghana to explore, to speak to people, and write all about that, and feels these recipes, these stories shouldn't just stay, back home. It should be written for everyone to read about it and to get inspired, and everyone pretty much, from all cultures, from all backgrounds, to get engaged in, farming in Africa, the ingredients, and also the techniques, the cooking and eating of, West African food.
Okay, my last question on this is, I'm sure, or, I hope that there is a book for you guys on the way.
Yes.
Is there?
Yes, there is.
Yeah. What would, in 10 years from now, what would you like your book to do? What would you like your book to, what's the impact of the book?
And that impact, what I really, I'm pretty much researching about that book is, I want that impact to pretty much explore origin, lots of origin traditions of West African food, and to get people, pretty much African themselves as well, in terms of how food has traveled, and lots of ingredients that we call super African now: cassava, ginger, peanuts, red bell peppers, and even Scotch bonnet that is so, evident in West African food today, was actually imported to pretty much understand, what was before the introduction, before the trades and all of these things were brought into Africa, and what was done to what was and what we're doing to what is.
Amazing. I think it is true that when we sort of come across a cuisine or a culture, say, for Italian, then it's kind of, or Chinese, and it's kind of like generic, but then we realize that as the deeper you dig, there's so much more to find out. And it's like regional Italian, and China is a continent. Really interesting. I hope you will get there. I'm sure you will. You're so accomplished. You guys, I'm sure you've all been to the restaurant. If you haven't yet, you can't. It's fully booked forever. But, trust me, it's good. It's good. It's good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I have for tonight the superpower of conjuring up legends of the food world. We have Caroline Eden. Caroline is a writer and book critic contributing to the Financial Times, Guardian, Times Literary Supplement. Her books include Samarkand, Black Sea and Red Sands, which won the prestigious Andre Seaman Award, and the Book of the Year for the New Yorker. Wow. Caroline's new book, Cold Kitchen, published in May, celebrates the importance and curiosity of feeling at home in the world. I will say that Caroline also has a Substack, which comes out to my inbox every week, and it's the nicest thing that happens to me. It's like a breeze and a little journey for me in my inbox, which is usually full of shit. So I strongly recommend you join it as well. But Caroline, you have a beautiful bit to read to us. So
Thank you, I do.
Do it.
Okay, so it's from a book called Dinner of Herbs, Village Life in 1960s Turkey, and it's by a woman called Carla Grisman, who is a woman I believe should be better known. So it's a longish passage, bear with me. We're going 250 kilometers east of Ankara. the beginning of spring. Through the last weeks of March, a change had been building up in the air. Even though there were still cold days, wind and snow even, the earth was slowly letting go. Minute yellow and pink crocuses had broken through the crusty bark of the ground, fragile wisps of moist colour miraculously breaking through the jagged clots of earth. The austere, stiff branches of the almond trees suddenly thawed into pink and white blossoms. Women sat in clusters outside, against the walls of their houses, protected from the wind in the sun. The evenings were longer, the air was soft at night, full of deep, sweet smells, and the stars seemed to hang closer and glow more splendidly. The men were beginning to prowl through their gardens and walk in groups early in the morning out to their fields, and day by day, more women and children went with them to begin to work. I got presents of eggs, still warm. I would find bowls of milk and yogurt on my bed and small damp fistfuls of tiny orange wildflowers left by the children. The children were exultant as they began to remember the spring before. Wait until the tomatoes come. They are red, red, red. And the cucumbers and the grapes and everything. We eat and everything is good. The first lambs were born, and every day more, until each family had a wobbly, bleating commotion of baby lambs, nudging the wooden doors of their pens, waiting for their mothers to come back from grazing. Often I went up to one of the higher places, overlooking the broad riverbed below and the spreading hills far on the other side, to watch the flocks coming home in the evening. They came over the crest of the farthest hill, almost out of sight. All you could discern was a faint stirring in the texture of the earth, an almost imperceptible movement forward, as if the surface of the hill itself had come loose and was beginning to slide in slow motion down the slope into the hollow. Then the landscape lay empty and fixed again, until soon, along the top of the nearer hill, appeared the broad rim of the advancing flocks. It spread slowly over the crest and poured thickly down the hillside, flowing forward as an entity carried along, ebbing and flowing and rippling across a doughy wool carpet of its back. When it appeared again, closer, it had broken up into hundreds of individual sheep, their heads bobbing in rhythm with their plodding steps. And I could see Bekir or Yusuf among them, and Tole and some other dogs walking along at the edge. They swarmed into the riverbed and began to move more quickly and to bleat, thinning into a narrow file as they funneled 2 or 3 at a time into the path that led up past the mosque and into the centre of the village. Now, in spring, the shepherds usually took another man with them, or some of the older boys, to carry the lambs that were dropped during the day up in the hills. You could see the men suddenly gathered around the shaggy, heaving form, bending and stooping, and after a few minutes later, placing a tiny snow-white creature in the arms of one of the children. Whoever brought back a lamb was given a few eggs or a bowl of milk in recompense. There was a shaggy, empty nest on the far corner of the roof of the mosque, and the people had begun to watch it. Every year, a pair of storks comes to nest there. They usually had 3 eggs, but can care for only 2, and the 3rd egg is found smashed on the ground near the mosque wall. They stay for 6 months, raise their young, and fly off again. They have been coming for many years, and the village people say it is always the same pair, as many other storks fly over the empty nest without stopping, on the way to their own nests in villages further north. One morning, some children ran by on their way to school chanting, "Lekelke geldi, lekelke geldi," the storks have come. Only one stork, though, the wife, they said. She was standing motionless in the nest, her head raised. A few moments later, she skimmed out over the village, flying low over the roofs. Then she went back to the nest. Then another flight, out in the opposite direction. All morning she came and went, returning to stand immobile, gazing out over the village. At noon, I looked again, and she was sitting in the nest, her wings folded flat around her. Somewhere in her instinctive world, was she feeling, "I am home"? 2 days later, a second stork was standing on the rim of the nest by her side.
Wow. I just want to say, if the second stork didn't come, I'd have walked out. I think I speak for all of us, right? Wow. Tell us about the person who wrote it. Who wrote it? What?
She's such a remarkable woman. She was an American, and she worked at the Jerusalem Post for some time, and she's best remembered for safekeeping antiquities in Afghanistan. But before she got to Afghanistan, she went for a year to this village called Uzakkoi, very small, very remote village, and she stays with the family for a year. She settles into their community, they look after her. No one really asks her many questions. The book's remarkable. I read it
What's
because
it called?
It's called Dinner of Herbs, Village Life in 1960s Turkey. And it took decades for this book to be published. But I read it because I've read a lot of books about Istanbul, but there are not many books in English about rural Anatolia. So when I wanted to find out more, I read this book, and I just fell in love with it. Because it's like poetry.
Yeah.
I have it on the side when I'm cooking sometimes, and I just read a couple of lines, and it's so transporting.
Yeah.
You know, you can just read a paragraph. Anyway, I've gone on too long, so.
No, I loved a little bit about the kids getting so excited about the tomatoes and cucumbers. I don't think that, many kids that I know would.
Yeah.
But they get really nice tomatoes in Anatolia, don't they?
Very, very, very good tomatoes in Turkey.
I think we will all be seeking out this book, and you guys will definitely be seeking out Caroline's books, because if you like to sort of travel through your kitchen or through your words, Caroline is your perfect guide.
Thank you.
It's my perfect guide anyway. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I love the next bit. Denai Moore is an acclaimed chef, author, and singer-songwriter. Yeah? Yeah? Upping the ante. Through a pop-up restaurant, Dee's Table, Denai cooks a unique plant-based take on Jamaican food, exploring nostalgia through the flavors she experienced in her childhood home. Denai's writing was featured in Metro, Vice, The Guardian, and more. Her first cookbook, Plentiful Vegan Jamaican Recipes to Repeat, was published last year, and it is wonderful. It's really, really good. And very surprising as well, because, you don't think that'll be a genre, but it is.
I mean, that's why I had to make it.
Someone needed to. Someone needed to. Yeah. No, it's because when you think about Jamaican food, it's actually very sort of vegetable-leaning, very...
It's so funny. It's like when I go to, extended family, and they're like, fish is vegan, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
What do you mean fish is not a vegetable?
So.
Yeah.
No, I went vegan. I grew up in Jamaica, so a lot of Plentiful is deeply nostalgic. And because I left when I was 9, most of my memory of Jamaica is via food. I had 2 mango trees and a tamarind tree, ackee tree, coconut tree, basically living the dream that I want now.
Yeah.
I wish I had a
do.
mango tree in my garden.
Yeah. But read us your bit, and I think it will take us there for a little bit.
This kind of segues really nicely because it was really important to kind of capture nostalgia in the book. And weirdly enough, lots of people have said when they read this passage that it's like a poem, which I didn't originally intend it to be.
I read it like a poem.
Yeah.
I read it like a poem.
But it's just things that make me think of Jamaica. Warm, toasty spices filled with nostalgia. Thyme, spring onions, Scotch bonnet, allspice. The simplicity of a freshly cut, sweet jelly coconut. Saturday soup with lots and lots of spinners. Roasted and fried breadfruit, my mum's fried dumplings. Callaloo with lots of garlic and onions. A freshly baked, flaky patty, or 2. Nutmeg-scented cornmeal porridge. Captain's hard dough bread. A really good festival by the beach. Hard food with a little bit of curry or brown stew gravy. Hard food with butter, hard food in general. Plantain, pronounced plantain. Yes, I said what I said. Sorrel on Christmas Eve, my grandmother's hominy corn porridge, stew peas with fluffy white rice with a touch of really good hot sauce, an ice-cold ginger beer, fresh ackee, rundown, rice and peas, sunripe mango is my favorite fruit, soft charred roti.
Wasn't that just gorgeous? and I feel that it's I hope some of you at least closed your eyes and sort of really let yourself go with it, because it's just, you know, the name of just name checking the things that bring you up will do the same for people when they hear it. It's quite extraordinary.
Yeah,
it's quite a personal experience.
Yeah, it's interesting, all those scents. Like every time I smell nutmeg, I think of my nana, like that smell is her. And I love that about food, like these core memories that we have around, you know, simple things, even just a mango in itself, it just like brings me back. You know, so I always wait. I actually don't really eat mangoes here.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, not all year round for sure.
Yeah,
but yeah.
well, I go to Drummond Street in the season, but that's just me. But I feel, you know, just like you say, the smell of nutmeg makes you think of your grandma, or for me, just, you know, or for us here, when we hear that word or those words, nutmeg, mango, all of these things, they just sort of, they have this power they cast a spell on us, don't they? They just take us.
Yeah, and I kind of
somewhere.
wanted to take people, it's like a scenery, you can visually see these things, you know?
Yeah.
And that's why it was also just, you know, it's in one of the earlier pages in my cookbook. And actually, I'm really gutted that I'm not reading it from my book, where you can just imagine the most joyful yellow and orange cover.
Yeah.
That's what Plentiful is. Like, for me, it just exudes joy. It's like my joy and love of the food that I grew up eating. I think Jamaica in itself is such a joyful island. And the food and just like art, like we've just, I don't know, there's a generosity there. And like, I guess when you go there, you'd understand that. Like, generosity in a sense that you go to someone's house, they'll give you a mango, they'll give you an avocado that's on their tree, because like, you obviously can't eat all the mangoes that are on the trees, right? So I think it was just important to me to try and capture those smells, like the food, just in its essence.
Yeah, well, and I think you bring us this generosity by taking us there. And thank you so much for taking us to a little bit of Jamaica.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. Big round. I love the next bit. This is Rosie Sykes, my good friend. Rosie Sykes is a chef, writer, and consultant. She had worked with some of the leading names in British food, from Joyce Molyneux to Sean Hill and Margot Henderson. She is the, you know, they worked with her. Rosie had her own pub in central London, had toured with delis and hotels nationwide. Along with working on events and community projects, Rosie has written 4 cookery books, all of them great, but her most recent one, Every Last Bite, published last year in February. I cannot recommend this book enough. It's just exploding with the simple, joyous stuff that you really deeply want to eat and really deeply want to cook, or better yet, have Rosie cook it for you. That's the dream. We all want Rosie to cook for us. Rosie, what are you reading to us, my love?
I'm reading from Mary Frances Kennedy Fisher's, I think it's her first book. It's called Long Ago in France. And it's a memoir of her as a young woman, 21, with her first husband, going to live in Dijon. And, you know, they're Americans, this is their first foray abroad. And I'm just going to read you this little bit. It's just charming, I think. Monsieur et Madame Émile Bonamour, or Papazi and Mamazi, the grandparents, lived in another house, a lovely place with chestnut trees in the courtyard and thin-legged gold chairs in the darkened dining room. But their hearts were still in Alsace, the fine, bright days of wealth where Papazi was known everywhere for his chocolates and his wedding cakes. Mamazi was a small, bewigged woman, still weeping for her son lost in the First War, and meekly waspish. She shook like an idling ocean liner from all the digitalis she took, and died a little while after I saw her last. Papazi hobnobbed like an exiled king with the better of the Dijon confiseurs, and listened to Beethoven concerts on his TSF radio, and every week or so baffled his grandchildren with a deft masterpiece for Sunday supper or for fun. He was a merry old man in spite of his pomposities. The second spring, when the Rigolos were there, we were worked subtly and completely into a frenzy for snails by Papazi's sure suggestion. As soon as burgeons darkened the bare branches, he began speculating mildly on the possible time for the annual snail hunt. The weeks went by and the leaves burst out on all the trees, and Papazi brought little twigs to the table and rubbed them between his thick, dexterous fingers. Quite crisp, he would remark ruminatively. Yes, I really do think, in fact, I'm almost sure that the snails this year will be finer, sweeter, plumper, truly more delicious than ever before. He looked calmly at his delighted listeners. The children were almost beside themselves. When can we go, Papazi? How about next Sunday? How about tomorrow? Will we get enough? Calm yourselves, my dears. This excitement will ruin the taste of your mother's quenelles. Plume and Doudous subsided their pricked popovers, and Dede smacked his lips more loudly than ever over a fresh bite to show his mature appreciation. Papazi ate silently for a minute. No, not next Sunday, he continued finally. Not next Sunday, but perhaps the Sunday after. That is, he added hastily, before the children could open their mouths to shout great glee, if the snails have fed enough, and if there are not too many noxious weeds for them to ruin themselves on this year. And of course, after we have gathered them, something may happen to spoil them. It is a long and difficult business, the preparing of snails. The first time I heard Papazi say that, I was fool enough to ask, why not buy them, then, all ready to eat? There was a shocked silence. The children stared at me. Papazi grew pink and haughty. Finally, his daughter rebuked me very gently. Oh, but madame, nobody can prepare snails like Papazi. These store snails are good, yes, but to fix them as my father does is an art. It is an achievement. I never acted so thoughtlessly again, but we were glad when the hunting time came to an end. We hoped the daily speculations. That nightfall, we returned from the woods with most of our snails unescaped from the sacks we carried them in. It had been a pleasant day. The next morning, we noticed a large packing box in the courtyard. It was covered with a sheet of glass, and on the glass were glued the bottoms of what seemed 1,000 snails warming themselves upside down. At night, it was still there, and the next day, they must purify themselves, Papazi explained. They must get rid of any poisonous food in them. They must, you might say, starve to death. How long will it be then? A few days, a week perhaps? These are very sturdy snails. Indeed they were. For a day or two more they stayed, bottoms up, on the glass. Then they began to drop off. Nights were punctuated by the thumps of snails fainting in their little black hole. We lost sleep, feeling very sick for them, waiting for the hunger swoon to overcome another and another. Every morning we counted the survivors and hoped they would loosen their hold before dark and let us sleep. At last, Papazi began his work, most of which I missed watching. There were parboilings to get the emaciated little creatures from their shells and individual operations to remove their less delectable portions. There were endless scrubbings of each lovely shell with little curved brushes made especially in Paris. Then the cadavers were tucked into their coffins again, and Papazi and Madame Rigolo made an extra trip to the market for the parsley, the garlic, and the sweet butter. The last scene I caught through the dining room door, Plume and Doudous bent gravely over a lighted table, pouring the hot sauce into each upended snail shell. Their hands trembled very slightly, and Plume's hot tongue stuck out. And when we finally ate them, les escargots d'or, sizzlingly hot and delicately pungent on our little curved forks, it was clear that store snails were only for those unhappy people who did not live with Papazi, or those fools too impatient to wait for his slow perfection.
Wow. So much in this. There's so much in this. This is such a fantastic, the culture clash.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
amazing.
just buy them.
Yeah, exactly.
But also this kind of like ridiculous, this sort of French wonderfulness, which is also ridiculous or ridiculousness, which is also wonderful.
Yeah, the ritualisticness of it is just extraordinary. All that time and energy, and I just love the fact that, you know, she's come. This is in the 1929, 1930. So she's come over to France. This whole thing is just so sensational and extraordinary to her, especially. And it's fascinating. But I just love that ritual. I mean, you do have to have a lot of time on your hands, don't you? But
it's not just science. It's kind of like, yes, it's very much sort of a connection to nature and season and this kind of like fastidious. But there is something so French about it as well, because you're just gonna dissect these poor creatures, and you know, they taste like garlic butter.
Yeah, it's true. And if they're not beautifully cooked by Papazi,
maybe that's
like
the
elastic
problem.
bands.
Maybe that's the problem. Maybe we've not tried the ones cooked by Papazi.
Yeah.
But that's such a wonderful image of them dropping down.
I know. Stopping people speaking. Yeah. Amazing. Truly.
Thank you so much for this,
Great
Rose.
pleasure. Thank you.
You're so wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, this one is a classic of the food writing world by Sally Abbey, who is an award-winning chef who has worked at some of London's most illustrious restaurants and who now helms the PEM at the five-star hotel Conrad London St James in Westminster. Sally is leading voice for equality, diversity, and work-life balance in hospitality, and appears regularly on television, reaching a banquet on Great British Menu in 2022. Of course, you've all seen it. It was amazing. Sally's first book, a memoir, A Woman's Place is in the Kitchen, A Chef's Dispatches from Behind the Pass, will be released this June. I read a little excerpt for it, and it's worth waiting for. It's a fantastic book. And Sally is going to read from kind of like the chef's Bible.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You want to tell us what it is?
So I'm reading from the late, great Anthony Bourdain's Kitchen Confidential. And the excerpt is called So You Want to Be a Chef.
Okay. Guns out.
For culinary students, line cooks looking to move up in the world, newcomers to the business, and the otherwise unemployables who make up so much of our workforce, I have a few nuggets of advice. The boiled down wisdom of 25 years of doing right and doing wrong in the restaurant industry. For the growing number of people who are considering becoming a professional chef as a second career, I have some advice too. In fact, let's dispose of you first. So you want to be a chef. You really, really, really want to be a chef. If you've been working in another line of business, have been accustomed to working 8 to 9 hour days, weekends and evenings off, holidays with the family, regular sex with your significant other, if you're used to being treated with some modicum of dignity, spoken to and interacted with as a human being, seen as an equal, a sensitive, multi-dimensional entity with hopes, dreams, aspirations, and opinions, the sort of qualities you'd expect of most working persons, then maybe you should reconsider what you'll be facing when you graduate from whatever 6-month course put this nonsense in your head to start with. I wasn't kidding when I said that earlier. At least in the beginning, you have no rights, are not entitled to an opinion or a personality, and can fully expect to be treated as cattle, only less useful. Believe it. I wish I had $1 for every well-meaning career changer who attended a 6-month course and showed up to be an extern in my kitchen. More often than not, one look at what they would really be spending their first few months doing, one look at what their schedule would be, and they ran away in terror. To those serious ones who know what it is they are entering, who are fully prepared, ready, willing, and able, and committed to a career path like, say, Scott Bryan's, who want to be chefs, must be chefs, whatever the personal costs and physical demands, then I have this to say to you. Welcome to my world. And consider these suggestions as your conduct, as attitude and preparation for the path you intend to follow. Be fully committed. Don't be a fence sitter or a waffler. If you're going to be a chef someday, be sure about it. Single-minded in your determination to achieve victory at all costs. If you think you might find yourself standing in a cellar prep kitchen one day after tourneing 200 potatoes, wondering if you made the right move, Or if some busy night on a grill station you find yourself doubting the wisdom of your chosen path, then you will be a liability to yourself and others. You are, for all intents and purposes, entering the military. Ready yourself to follow orders, give orders when necessary, and live with the outcome of those orders without complaint. Be ready to lead, follow, or get out of the way. Learn Spanish. Obviously, that probably doesn't apply to London, but it
Learn
definitely
Turkish
does in
now,
New York.
right?
Yeah. Don't steal. Always be on time. Never make excuses or blame others. Never call in sick, except in cases of dismemberment, arterial bleeding, sucking chest wounds, or the death of an immediate family member. Granny died, bury her on your day off. Lazy, sloppy, and slow are bad. Enterprising, crafty, and hyperactive are good. Be prepared to witness every variety of human folly and injustice. Assume the worst about everybody. Try not to lie. Remember, this is the restaurant business. No matter how bad it is, everybody has probably heard worse. Forgot to place the produce order? Don't lie about it. You made a mistake. Admit it and move on. Just don't do it again, ever. Avoid restaurants where the owner's name is over the door. Avoid restaurants that smell bad. Avoid restaurants with names that will look funny or pathetic on your resume. Think about that resume. And read. Read cookbooks, trade magazines. They are useful for staying abreast of industry trends and for pinching recipes and concepts. Some awareness of the history of your business is useful too. It allows you to put your own miserable circumstances in perspective when you've examined and appreciated the full sweep of culinary history. Orwell's Down and Out in Paris and London is invaluable, as are Nicholas Freeling's The Kitchen, David Blum's Flash in the Pan, the Batterberry's fine account of American restaurant history on the town in New York, and Joseph Mitchell's Up in the Old Hotel. Read the masters, Escoffier, Bocuse, and others, as well as the Young Turks, Keller, Marco Pierre White, and the more recent generations of innovators and craftsmen. And finally, have a sense of humor about things. You'll need it.
So I'm quite, I think a lot has changed in our industry since this was written, but then it's still so true, right?
Yeah,
Yeah?
sure, yeah.
But I do feel that there is, we do have this image in our industry, in hospitality, and especially chefs, but also front of house, of this kind of like hardcore, down and out, do your thing, that don't work. But things are not like that completely anymore, but still, is this still relevant, do you think? Is this still a thing?
I think it is. I think it's important.
Are we in a London bubble? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's important to see where we've come from and look at where we're going. I know there are certainly kitchens that are pretty hardcore in and around London. I won't name them.
No, definitely, yeah.
But they do exist. And as much as I think that the hospitality industry is changing for the better, I think it's really important that we don't rest on our laurels and believe that it's changed completely, because it hasn't. So I think these things are important to remind us.
But do you think part of this change is getting a different story out there, or getting a different narrative out there, that it doesn't have to be like this?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And that's why I've written A Woman's Place is in the Kitchen. It's basically an account of what I experienced, over 15 years in working in Michelin-star kitchens, and then how I've made the change that I want to see going forward, and I think that's important.
Yeah. No, I remember reading this bit when I was sort of a budding chef, and I was like, yes. And then I didn't circle back to it until just now, and I was still, yes, because there's still deeply in our profession, it's still a no bullshit, attitude.
Yeah.
Admit and don't bullshit.
Even
if you're working, 40-hour
sensitive.
week or...
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I think because our industry is so time sensitive, in most jobs, you can send an email and then someone might read it on Thursday. But, if you make someone wait until Thursday for their steak, they're going to be pretty upset.
It's not going to happen. Yeah, I will say that I do stand by this list for anyone wanting to become a chef, and I would sort of caveat that I've worked in a few places with the owner's name on the door, and I loved it. Very proud to have it on. So this is my one caveat, and I will say, don't do it unless you have to. That's kind of the thing.
Yeah.
But we have to, we have to. We have no choice. So if you have to, there's no better job. But if you don't have to, it's a fantastic hobby. Thank you so much.
It's a lot less stressful at
yeah.
home, yeah.
Thank you so much for bringing this back to me. I think, it's just a wonderful piece of writing.
Thank you.
Like a lot of what he did. Thank you. And I'm looking forward for your book as well. I've read The Expert, and I can't wait to dig in. Big rounds. Thank you so much. Our next reader is Chetna Makan, who burst into our screens on the Great British Bake Off in 2014. And since has gone on to write 8 cookbooks, amazing, create a popular YouTube channel, Food with Chetna, which I avoid because every time I watch it, I just want whatever she's cooking. Her writing appears regularly across British food media and BBC Good Food, Guardian Feast, Waitrose Food, amongst others. Chetna's most recent book, Easy Indian Vegetarian, will be published in July this year. I would also say she's one of the nicest and definitely most stylish people in the food world. Sit down, Jeremy, you too. But then there's Chetna. And Chetna is going to read for us something that she wrote, right?
Yes. So this is actually from the new book, Easy Indian. And
Sneak preview, guys. You saw it
sneak
first.
preview. It's not out for another couple of months, maybe actually 6 weeks or so.
We're going to sign NDAs on their way out.
Yeah. I'm just reading a bit from the intro because I was very lucky to go to many Indian kitchens for this book and the generosity of people. But what I loved was the stories all of those home cooks had and the experience, and oh my God, just on and on. But I have written a little bit about those women here, but I'm just going to read about one of them right now. My journey led me to Ahmedabad in Gujarat, a state famous for its lively vegetarian food. In the process of looking for home cooks who would be happy to share their knowledge with me, I met Sheetal Bhatt. Now, Sheetal is not just a passionate cook, but she's doing something truly commendable, exploring the native foods of Gujarat, documenting the fast vanishing food practices and traditions of Gujarati cuisine, and promoting healthy home-cooked meals. Meeting her was my lucky break that opened the doors to many kitchens in Ahmedabad, from Sheetal's friends to her cousins. Everyone welcomed me with so much love and warmth, and I'll be forever grateful for them, for the experience of watching them create magic in their kitchens. This is my chance to share a little bit about them with you. My first visit was to Avani's home, an attractive, warm family home with an equally welcoming kitchen, packed with jars of ingredients, old and beautiful kitchen equipment, and much more. Her passion for cooking. Avani Mehta is a talented and experienced cook who follows Jainism and is very proud of its principles and values. She cooks fresh meals for her family every single day, and everything is homemade, from breakfast and lunch to dinner and all the snacks in between. And within a few minutes of arriving, she had cooked the most delicious lunch for me, complete with dal, flatbreads, and even the sweets. It was a joy to watch her move around her kitchen with such free-flowing charm and elegance. Avani shared a lot about Jainism with me while she was cooking. Jainism teaches non-violence and reducing harm to all living things, so a vegetarian diet that inflicts the least amount of harm is followed. Jains have a strict list of do's and don'ts when it comes to what they should and should not eat. They don't eat anything that is grown under the soil. One of the reasons being that when you pull the plant to eat the vegetable, you are destroying the habitat, causing harm to any living beings that live around and in that soil. Jains also believe that as the sun does not touch a subterranean vegetable, that makes it unhealthy. They don't eat any sprouted food, which they believe causes harm to your body, and prefer to skip vegetables for 11 days in a month. The idea being that it gives your body a break from the vegetables and it lets it balance out from within. They believe that consuming milk in the evenings is beneficial for your body, and they don't combine yogurt with other foods, preferring to eat it on its own to get the most out of it. Now, Jains eat 48 minutes after sunrise, a practice called Navkarshi, and the time of sunrise is published every day in the newspaper so that people can follow it easily. They also follow Chow Vihar, which means they stop eating after sunset, also known as Ratri Bhojan Tyag, which means giving up the evening meal. Now, this is something that really got me thinking about intermittent fasting. It may be a new fashion in Western food, but don't the roots of it lie in Jainist principles? Like a lot of things, it has been taken up from Indian culture and served to the world under new packaging. Rather than being an amazing Western discovery, intermittent fasting has in fact been practiced by Jains for centuries.
Wow. So I didn't know any of that about Jainism. I know very little about it. But this is something that's so often when you come across another culture, a new culture, the first thing that you will know is its food culture.
Absolutely, and this was just a little bit. I didn't want to make the book about Jainism, so I only wanted to write a little bit that would keep it interesting for people. But there was so much more, and me being born and brought up in India, I still didn't know a lot of it, and she was just so generous, and the fact that she cooks absolutely everything and for her family, and like for her mother-in-law, if her mother-in-law she served something which the mother-in-law thought didn't look nice, she wouldn't eat it. So everything was just
wow, no judgment there.
No.
Huh?
But like her life was her kitchen and her family. That is it, her full-time job for years and years. And it just was so inspiring. But she enjoyed it. It wasn't like a chore for her. It wasn't like, she had to do it. She wanted to do it. And she was she is quite sad at the state of the next generation where they're not learning to cook the way. So these things are being lost, which is quite kind of a sad thing.
Yeah. Just out of interest, what do they eat on the 11th if they're on a vegetarian diet?
So they don't eat vegetables on those 11 days, and those 11 days are also put in the calendar. So those dates you can't eat those vegetables. You can have lentils, but you can't have the vegetables.
Okay.
So there are certain things, and they have that calendar for everyone to purchase. And so you know when the sunset will be, you know the days you're not supposed to eat those vegetables. It's amazing.
Yeah. But this is I think, for these traditions, especially these, sometimes we all in our lives were lucky enough to meet these really special people who have a way about food, and you kind of like learn by osmosis almost, just being with them and recording them, good segue to Rachel, because, she's been recording Foodways. Thank you so much for that. That was so interesting and so transportative. A big round of applause, please. For our next reader, Rachel Roddy. She is a food writer from London, based in Rome. She's the author of 3 books, contributes regularly to a number of publications, both in the UK and Italy, and for 9 years has written a weekly column in the Guardian newspaper called A Kitchen in Rome. Rachel's most recent book, An A to Z of Pasta, was shortlisted for the Andrew Seaman Award in 2021. Her Andrew Seaman Award-winning book, 5 Quarters, is being reissued this June for 10 years. Yeah, mine too, because ours came out,
your cakes.
Yeah, it's true. And Rachel is also probably has given me the most useful advice that anyone's ever given me about writing about food. Because she, I'm always at awe that she has a weekly column and it's always interesting and fresh and so beautifully written. I think, and I said to her, how do you do it? And she said, well, I just start writing about the food, and everything else builds around it. And this is every time I stuck, this comes back to me. I never thanked you for it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Read the night away, Rachel. Okay. What did you bring us?
I'm going to read the introduction of the Italian food historian and medievalist. He's a professor of food culture and medieval history at Bologna University, Massimo Montanari, who is a great food scholar, but also has always had a short food column in either a newspaper or a food magazine. And so this is a collection of his short pieces of work, and this is the introduction, which, now I'm kind of doubting why I chose it, but anyway, I'm going to read it, and then we can talk about it afterwards. Okay. We were cooking meatballs in the kitchen one evening, boiled beef, cooked cardoons, parmesan, breadcrumbs, 2 eggs, salt and pepper. Once the mixture was done, we shaped the meatballs and arranged them neatly on a plate. At that point, Marisa advised, now before cooking them, it's best to leave them to rest for a few hours. In that way, they firm up and they get thoroughly blended. It occurred to me that letting meatballs rest is much like what happens in our minds when we work out an idea. Ideas are the result of experiences and encounters and reflections and suggestions, the many ingredients that come together and then turn into a new thought. But before that can happen, it's useful to let those ingredients rest, to give them time to settle, to become blended, to firm up. The resting of meatballs is a little bit like the resting of thoughts. After a while, they just turn out better. The kitchen is not just a place where survival and pleasure are planned. It is also the ideal place for training the mind. To observe the process of cooking, the transformation of raw materials subjected to the heat of the oven, or the inconvertible rules of the ability of things going together or not, the order and sequence of actions done in a particular way, something works out brilliantly, done differently, it's a complete disaster. Mayonnaise, for example. These all allow us to contemplate the rules that govern daily life, the things that happened around each of us every day. Cooking is not an inferior activity. It stimulates the intelligence. And this view was one held by the famous lady of the 17th century, the Sister Juana Inés de la Cruz, who was a major poet of the Mexican Baroque. In her proud affirmation in the role of women, which caused no small amount of derision in the macho society of the time, she defended the intellectual dimension of preparing food. She compared it to philosophical reflection, even declaring its superiority. "What I can tell you," wrote Sister Juana, "about the secrets of nature I discovered while I was cooking. I see that an egg solidifies as it fries in butter or oil, and on the contrary, it separates in syrup. I see that for sugar to remain free-flowing, it is enough to put a tiny, tiny drip of water or juice from a little bit of fruit like quince. I see that the yolk and the white of the same egg are such contrary entities that with sugar they can be whipped, but never together." These observations are far more profound than they would seem at first glance. And Sister Juana continues provocatively, "One can easily philosophize while preparing dinner. I maintain that Aristotle would have written much more had he cooked." In the following pages, I have collected 100 short pieces that appeared during the past few years in Consumatori, the monthly magazine of co-op supermarkets, and the Sunday pages of the newspaper La Repubblica. I thank the directors of both of these places for allowing me to reprint these articles, to which I have added a few small pieces that were published elsewhere. Small, but I hope not without interest, because I've always held the conviction that important topics can be treated lightly, starting from simple reflections on things like cooking, the words that cross our path, the important aspects of our culture. It is an idea of which I'm particularly fond, which inspires my scholarly work, and which I try to communicate, even to the most non-academic circles, is that the practice of cooking, everything it has to do with food, modes of preparation, techniques of transformation, consumption, rituals and conviviality, not only constitute a sizable segment of the culture of a society, but in many cases reveal fundamental mechanisms about our material and intellectual behaviour. Cooking can thus be regarded as a metaphor for life, unless we recognise that life itself is a metaphor for cooking.
That is so good. That is so good. You're always finding these sort of vintage food writers and ancient food books that you scratch around for. Is this a little bit of a pursuit of yours?
I don't know. Well, I love him. Can I just say, I'm very pleased with myself because I read that without my glasses.
Wow. If that doesn't get you a round of applause.
I mean, that was just... That was like... It was quite nice. It was slightly wild. I could feel the text sort of going in that way. I'm thinking, Jeremy, somebody give me their glasses. Oh, good. I don't know. I mean, I really love Montanari. He's an academic and wonderful scholar and has written rich books about Italian food and culture, and he's a medievalist. And, you know, his book about Italian food and culture is a serious tome. But he's also a hugely engaging writer, because as a professor, he's always believed that, you know, food and culture and writing about food and culture, which is actually just writing, isn't it? Really, really good writing, is for everybody. So he's always written in either a newspaper or a magazine these short pieces, and this book is lovely. He'll write about, I don't know, figs or McDonald's or couscous. He's written beautifully about spaghetti and tomato sauce, the sort of iconic Italian dish, which of course is everything but, you know, spaghetti from the Arabs and tomatoes from the Americas, you know. So he explores a lot of that in such an engaging way. Am I answering your question? So I really enjoy reading him hugely, and I feel he sort of grounds me in my work. Yeah, I'm a bit like Caroline. I keep him in the kitchen. He feels very wise, but also funny. That wasn't
very
particularly
funny.
fun.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that wasn't hilarious, was it? But anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
But he's very, very funny, and also is great about Italy. You know, he pulls the rug all the time from under you, particularly sort of middle-aged food writers like me writing about Italy. You know, the minute you get lyrical, he's there to, you know, pull the mat out. So it's really, I like him very much.
Which is so important.
Very.
So important to sort of put a pin in the sort of bloated balloon of food writing. You can get very sort of nostalgic and romantic, and it's really important to remember that it's, you know,
it's food. And also the cooking, like the cooking, because I write a weekly column for The Guardian, and actually the instructions are in the text. And actually, I often imagine people standing in their kitchens cooking. I'm pretending to say sort of philosophizing while you're cooking, but I do a lot of my thinking while I'm cooking. And it isn't great philosophy, but those actions, those things give me food for thought. And I love the column because I feel like we all do it together.
Yeah.
Which is, so I feel that piece was about that as well, the daily acts, those sort of repeated acts which are of great philosophical meaning or just plenty of meaning.
Okay. Let's talk about the really explosive bit in this. The cardoons and the meatballs? How? What? Why?
Yeah.
What are they doing there?
Really good, though.
Really?
Yeah, bulking, but sort of bulking them up a bit, like, there are crumbs too. But...
Okay. That's, take notes. How are we at the end? How are we at the last reader? A big round to Rachel. Jeremy Lee, the most stylish. Sorry, Chetna. He's not the most stylish, but he's such an icon of our time. I'm sure so many Londoners, he's such a, we've all seen him cycling in his short shorts around St James's Park. A very stylish man. Jeremy Lee is an award-winning chef and writer who has been described by Jay Reiner as a rare phenomenon in the London food world. A chap everyone agrees is a good thing. Doesn't happen. Jeremy's been chef proprietor of the heralded Covadis in Soho since 2012, a restaurant where the menu reflects both the seasons and Jeremy's deepest culinary desires. He writes for numerous newspapers and periodicals and has appeared on television, including Could You Eat an Elephant for Channel 4, several seasons of Great British Menu. Jeremy's first book, how's that your first book? Cooking Simply and Well for One or Many, was published in 2020, went on to win the Andre Simon Award, Gilda Food Writer Award, Fortnum & Mason Award, was named the Times Food Book of the Year, and is such a spectacular book, very well deserved of all the love that it got, and is reading something so wonderful to us. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, thank you for that. That's a tough act to follow, actually.
Fun, huh?
As is this law. I don't know how I got to the last one. When I was a kid...
It's not you, it's Julia.
It's Julia.
It's always Julia.
Always about Julia.
Yeah.
And when I was a kid growing up, one of the things that used to fascinate me watching my mum, who was a terrific cook in the kitchen, there was always a pile of books. And always in the pile, regardless of how it changed the mood, there would be Elizabeth David, Jane Gregson, and Julia Child, particularly in Julia Child's kitchen. And it wasn't until years and years later, and in fact, writing a book of my own, that I suddenly understood why. And Elizabeth David would take you on a journey, fabulously transported. My mum did have the knack of reading Elizabeth David recipe and cooking it. And Jane Grigson's recipes were great, but it was all about the writing. Julia Child had this fabulous practicality about her, with immense verve and personality and a fearlessness, which is how she managed to get every single household in America cooking. And these poor benighted housewives actually beginning to feel a bit proud of what they did. And it's a phenomenal, extraordinary occurrence that she managed to do this. And that was in the 50s. And this book got written in the 70s, and Mastering the Art is a magnificent book and stands unique amongst the pantheon of great books. But this book is a delight, and it is a collection, a bit like Jane Grigson's Good Things, of stuff that just amused her and delighted her. And she was just as rich as they're funny. And she had a great wit about her. And so when I was cooking at Alice Little many, many, many years later, and Juliet Peston put a Hungry dish on with Caesar salad. And she turned on and she said, you know, Julia Child wrote 3 pages on Caesar salad. 3 pages. You know. So here are musings upon Caesar.
And Child voice.
Wow, even I don't know I could do that with this. But the Scots are appalling mimics, so forgive me if we go lilting off into some other realm. So here we are on musings upon Caesar and his salad. One of my early remembrances of restaurant life was in Mexico, at Tijuana in 1925 or 1926 with my parents, who were wildly excited they should finally lunch at Caesar's restaurant. Tijuana, just south of California-Mexican border, was flourishing then in the American Prohibition era. Californians came in droves to eat in the restaurants. They drank forbidden beer and cocktails as they toured the bars of the town. They strolled in the flowered patio of Agua Caliente, listening to the marimba band, and they gambled wickedly at the casino. Word spread about Tijuana and the good life, and about Cesar Cardini's restaurant, and about Caesar's salad. My parents, of course, ordered the salad. Caesar himself rolled the big cart up to the table, tossed the cost lettuce in a great wooden bowl, and I wish I could say I remember his every move, but I don't. The only thing I see again clearly is the eggs. I can see him break 2 eggs over that cost lettuce and roll them in, the greens going all creamy as the eggs flowed over them. 2 eggs in a salad, 2 one-minute coddled eggs, and garlic-flavored croutons and grated Parmesan cheese. It was a sensational of a salad from coast to coast in the United States, and there were even rumblings of its success in Europe. How could a mere salad cause such emotion? But one remembers that this was way back in 24 when Cesar Cardini invented it, and it was only in the early 1920s that refrigerated transportation came into being. Before then, when produce was out of season, there was no greenery to be had. Before then, too, salads was considered rather exotic, definitely foreign, probably Bolshevist, and anyway, food only for sissies. Almost 50 years later, when we decided upon Caesar salad for a television program, I had, as usual, studied all the sources and found, as usual, there was no agreement among any of them. I evolved that what most appealed to me, but it lacked a certain authenticity, and it had no drama. Then my producer, Ruthie, suggested we try to locate someone from the era who knew Caesar and really knew that salad was. There anyone? Indeed there was. Ruthie found Rosa Cardini. His daughter was living in Los Angeles area and was the head of a successful spice and salad dressing business. I had a long transcontinental conversation with her, taking copious notes. She was born 5 years after her father created his masterpiece, she said, but she knew every detail because it had been so much discussed and remembered. As we went over each move, the salad began to take on life for me. At first, she said, Caesar used only the tender inside leaves, the hearts of cost lettuce, and he served them whole, arranging each portion on a large chilled dinner plate, leaf by leaf. You picked up a leaf by its stem, and then you ate it in your fingers, leaf by leaf. What a great idea! What fun for television. But, she went on, since many diners do not like picking up sauced items with their fingers, witness the reaction to lobster à l'American served in the shell, he later changed to bite-sized pieces. Was there anything special in the way he manipulated the salad? Yes, he had a uniquely Caesar way of tossing the salad. In fact, he didn't toss it. He scooped under the leaves to make them turn like a large wave breaking towards him to prevent those tender shoots of green from bruising. Again, drama, and a new twist for our show. How about anchovies, mustard, herbs, and so forth? No. No anchovies. Caesar never used anything but the best oil, fresh lemons, salt and pepper, a little Worcester. That's where those anchovies crept in so many of the recipes I had seen. Worcestershire sauce does have a speck of anchovy. Caesar also insisted on the best and freshest parmesan and homemade croutons basted with oil in which fresh garlic had been steeped. This is the way we did the salad on our television program, and I have always been delighted with it. It is a very simple salad, really, and its beauty rests entirely in the excellence of its ingredients. The best and freshest of everything, from cost lettuce to oil, eggs, lemons, croutons, garlic, and cheese. Wow. Do you want the recipe?
It's like she's in the room. Whoa! No, but it really does capture all her energy and verve and kind of kooky, crazy passion about food. It's wonderful. Thank you so much for this.
A great pleasure, thank you.
So much for this. Guys, I'm kind of looking at the clock, and sadly I need to let you guys ask your questions. That's the time. This is the time of the evening. So the rules are as follow. You can ask anything you want. There's no judgment here, I think. My wife is not here. So yes, no judgment. Where's my wife? But ask a question, don't tell a story. Okay, do you know what I mean? You know what I mean? It's not making a statement, it's asking these beautiful people a question. Roving mic, do we have? Roving mic? Ah, okay. So we have our first question here. I don't know where the roving mic is, but I think it's roving your way.
If I say it, maybe you can repeat it.
No, it's roving your way.
Oh, that's why I just
Ah, she is here, so yes, judgment. Hey.
Do you ever retire any of your cookery books, or do they just stand in piles, taking up space in your home?
Ooh, choose one. Choose one.
Oh, I can't.
There's going to be much debate.
Rachel.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
I keep them. I've hoarded them, so they're basically taking over the entire house. They're not a very big house. They're just in piles everywhere on the shelves and stuff.
Yeah.
And no, I can't bear to part with any of them, ever.
Yeah, and she's right. And she's right, and everyone here will agree with you. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. That was the correct question. That was the correct answer. More questions, my dear. Yeah, roving rove. Rove the night away.
Never spoken into a microphone. How terrifying. What advice would you give to kind of start writing? Like, the passion is there, I think, but I'm terrified that my English is my writing is not good enough. So how would you advise to just start?
Interesting. Who wants to take that, guys?
I feel like I'm also, as a songwriter as well, I feel like writing is so intimate, and it's you and the page first before you even think about sharing it to anyone else. So I would just write as much as you want, write the thoughts that come to your head first thing in the morning, and it's a no judgment zone. So I feel like don't be so precious or stuck in your head about, how correct it is, as long as there's a feeling. I feel like the more you write, the better you get, the more you understand your voice.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, that's really good. I can't improve on it. It is actually your voice, that you need to get used to seeing on the page, and you just need to sort of cringe a lot, right? Right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of cringe, but you just need to get used to spend your life cringing. That's writing. More questions, my dears. Yes, hi, how are you? We have? Yeah?
Hi.
Hey.
The aspect of books that I'm most interested in the food and restaurant industry is ones that are memoirs about business. We've seen more of them in the US with the likes of Denai Moore, David Chang, Will Guidera, and Sally, you reference Anthony Bourdain. There's, I'd say, one person in the audience whose memoirs about how he built his businesses that I'd love to read, that Itamar, you used to work for.
Yeah?
So whoever
Are you working on it? It's happening, I think.
Oh, it is, great.
Yeah.
So my question to whoever wants to take it, whose memoirs in the food industry, like their stories, how they built their businesses, their thought process, and how they learned from failures, would you love to read?
Okay, that's a really, really, really interesting question. Really, really interesting question. I'm trying to think if I have an answer from the top of my head. Aji, do you have anyone? You kind of do, because you're kind of holding this book, but do you have anyone that you can think of?
Yeah, and I've actually, I think Simon Rogan.
Okay, yeah, interesting.
Yeah, Simon Rogan, and
yeah,
that's fun. I'd like to pretty much read Simon Rogan and Aston Bloomington as well. He's got a plethora of books that I've actually read.
Yeah, and he's really eloquent. Sally, anyone?
I'm not sure, I don't know necessarily business focus. I mean, one of my favourite memoirs is Blood, Bones and Butter by
Oh, yeah, beautiful.
And that's,
you read it?
Yeah, I mean, that's about, obviously the story of her life, but how she,
What's her name? What's her name? Gabrielle Hamilton. Yeah. It's a beautiful book.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of my favourite.
The bit with the rat.
Yeah.
Ooh, read it, definitely. I don't know if we answered your question, but we said some things, and that's... we said some names. Deal with it. Yes, my dear, with the beautiful flower. What's your good name?
Thank you. My question was, what was the first cookbook you had to have in your kitchen, and if you still use it all the time?
Okay, who's taking this?
Actually, I might take this because in India, there used to be still the guy who rules the TV was Sanjeev Kapoor, and he was the one who actually started cooking programs and is still doing cooking programs. And his show used to come once a week, and my mom used to sit and write down recipes. And when I moved to England, I bought a 6-pack of his little books, like starter, main, dessert. So it's like that pack. So that is something I don't use it, but it's just that memory of growing up, watching my mom watch the program. That is something I had to bring with me here. So yeah, that is still very much placed in my kitchen there.
Caroline, what do you have? I think you're sitting on something there.
No, it's casting my mind back. It was Plenty, Ottolenghi. I came to food quite late. I was writing about travel first, but when I had that book, it was the one cookbook I had in my house share in Brixton, and I would cycle to the bookshop and come back and try and recreate with my shared kitchen the best I could these great Ottolenghi recipes. And I've got the copy at home. The spine is completely battered. That's it. Yeah.
Those are the best ones. Yeah. Thank you for that. That was a good question. More questions, my dears. Yes, there. Yeah. Hiya.
Hello. I'm wondering if the cookbooks that you read to relax, like before bed on a train, if they're the same authors that you'd have in the kitchen or right by the stove, or if they're different.
Good question. Okay, who's taking that?
I'll take that one.
Yeah, I knew
I'll
you
take
would.
that.
Yeah. Talk about Julia Child.
Well, she is essential reading, and this is great reading. Whereas the art of French cooking is very technical and brilliant, and will create you the perfect recipe. But I'd Elizabeth David, always, I think, still, which is my mum set that scene very deep inside me when I was a kid. And I think the two that I love to read still, and you can dive into them, are An Omelette and a Glass of Wine and French Provincial Cooking. And their essays in An Omelette and a Glass of Wine are the perfect length for journeying. And French provincial, it's just a joy to have in the kitchen. You know, somehow Elizabeth David used to write about how she would have Eliza Acton at her side when she was writing. And I think there's quite a nice continuancy with that, and each generation has their own one. And there's quite a big gulf between Eliza Acton and Elizabeth David, but she was unknown for about 100 years. So I think there's license there. But I think when the great thing is to keep reading, to find the book that is the one that will become your great companion. And it's interesting and it's fascinating and it's wonderful when you do find it. And I was very lucky I found it very, very young, and that's something that stuck and remained. And interestingly, with our new generation of, you can't even, I don't think you're allowed to say new anymore, not even young. I'm just going to stick to a new generation of cooks. What's interesting, they want now, you know, they are not interested in the old grandpa in the kitchen. They want, you know, who's the young buck. You know, that's why Kitchen Confidential became so utterly important. You know, and where Marco Pierre White once was the young Turk is now a grandpa. You know, and so there's always this, it's constantly evolving. But I do think the originals in their field, I think like Madhur Jaffrey originally bringing Indian cooking to our screens, it's still magical reading, and all her books are wonderful. Yeah. So I think it's constantly just going through books, and you'll find there, you go, oh, that's it. That's the recipe that works for me.
But sorry, Chetna.
No, I was just going to say, I have a following question for all of you guys. Actually, am I allowed? How do you read food books at night or travel? Don't you get hungry? Like, it's the last thing I want to do.
I think it's because
if you're reading something so interesting and somebody's talking about the kitchen, or even if it's not a recipe about food, you want to go and cook it.
Yeah.
Like, I just can't. Like, I don't know how you guys resist then.
Yeah,
to
no,
go
it's a hard one. I always have probably like all of us here, I have a big pile of cookbooks by the bed that I'm kind of like, okay, I'm going to dig in. And then, you know, when I do, I'm just kind of like, I'm so hungry now, I want to go and cook. Yeah, it's a problem. It is a problem.
Yeah, we've also definitely got a screw loose as well.
I mean, it's not that kind of session, Jeremy.
No, I really? Doctor, I wondered why there were no handkerchiefs on the table.
We should do this, but maybe another
we need
time.
tissues next time.
Definitely. Questions more? Yes, roving mic there.
Hey. Good evening. Thank you so much. This has been very enjoyable. In light of it being Mental Health Awareness Week and the mind, body, and stomach being connected, what is your favorite comfort food that would help you during a writing session?
Ooh.
That's for everybody.
Ooh. Rosie, is this one yours?
Well, I do. I think I am quite a comfort food maker. So, well, anchovy butter cures all ills and makes everything better.
That's
true. You can just have it on toast or on an egg or on some asparagus. I mean, it's got so many applications. So I would recommend, I mean, I'd put that on a prescription.
Yeah.
And I think...
Save the NHS.
Yeah, I think it could do that. And I think we could convert a lot of people who don't like anchovies with anchovy butter. Don't you think?
Yeah. Even Julia Child.
Yeah.
And Caesar Cardi.
Yeah. She might sneak some in.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to take that?
I was going to say Haribo, to be honest, when I was writing.
Really? Yeah.
Survived on sweets.
I know one person who's, jelly babies. Yeah. Very good. I hope we answered. I don't know what's, I don't know what to say to that. That's a very good question.
Very good question.
Yeah, anchovy butter, I'll take it.
Or Rosie's biscuits.
Rosie's biscuits. Everything that Rosie makes.
Yeah.
Everything that Rosie makes. Tuna lasagna that Rosie makes can cure all heartache. I promise you. I promise you the recipe's in the book, yeah?
Yeah.
More questions, my dear. Why are you growling at me?
Nothing.
Questions more? Yeah, there at the back. Sorry, Mike Rovers. You're going to do up the stairs. Hi there.
Hiya. It's a question for Rachel. What book do you give people most often? A cookbook.
Good question.
That is a good question.
That's a really good question.
Yeah. Why just her? I think everyone should answer that. Go.
Yeah.
Rachel, you go.
Well,
God, I don't know. God, that's really hard. No, I can think of, I gave Simon Hopkinson's Roast Chicken and Other Stories to about, I think when I bought it for myself, I bought it for 3 other people. So I've given lots of books over the years, but that's probably the most. I just loved it, and so I wanted other people. Well, I have 2 reactions when I get a book. Sometimes I love it so much that I don't want to give it to anybody else.
Yeah.
And sometimes I love it so much that I want to give it to everybody.
You
and that's
bulk
what
buy.
Bulk buy.
Yeah.
So Simon Hopkinson.
I will say that I think the book that I gave most is not a cookbook but a food book. That'll be Heartburn.
Yeah.
Everybody's happy to get it because it's so good. It's a Nora Ephron book and it's really good. I can say the last cookbook that I gave someone was Ed Smith, The Egg Book, which I think is a very giftable, like everybody likes eggs. And it's not kind of like an insult because it's not like, hey, learn how to cook. Maybe some eggs. Anyone has another one? Another good one? Jeremy, you're sitting on one?
Well, yes. At Christmas time, I gave the kitchen. Grub Street issued the Elizabeth David pamphlets that she published in her cookery shop on Bourne Street all those years ago. And it's quite a sweet little box set with all the little pamphlets, which you can't get the pamphlets for love nor money. They're a shocking price, even on eBay and Abe. And so it was a brilliant little thing. So I took them into the kitchen, and they were dutifully puzzled, and they promised to take them home. And then, and they very sweetly read them, And there's the definitive Christmas recipes and all sorts of lovely things that I grew up with. They're in there. So that was a very nice one, and and it was something that would be very hard to get. So I think that's an interesting aspect of books to give folk.
Yeah, it's kind of the perfect gift, really. Any cookbook or food book.
It's a really nice, lovely thing.
It's a really good thing to give. Yeah. Anyone else have a hot?
I always, if I see it ever, because it's quite hard to get hold of, it's Margaret Costa's 4 Seasons.
Okay.
Cooking, and it's just such a lovely book because it's how I learned a lot more about cooking seasonally. And it was reissued by Grub Street as well. And it's just a really lovely book. It's a great read. So if ever I see it in a charity shop, I'll grab it and then I'll give it to someone random. Yeah, I'll try. I've got a copy.
September 26th, yeah.
I would highly recommend that one if you see it in a charity shop.
Do we have time for another question? Who's the time in charge? One more question? Do we have time for one more, explosively good question? Rovers? Mikes? Is it explosively good?
I think so.
Okay, so we're going to do 2 questions.
At the front.
There, we have 2 questions.
Two questions.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. It's been fascinating.
Hasn't it just been the best?
Yes. But I'm sitting here feeling really daunted. I'm not a very good cook. I can read the recipes and think they're fantastic. And when I try and put them into practice, it's not the same. So my question is, do you expect people to be able to cope? Keeping up?
I just want to say...
That's really good.
Don't put so much pressure on yourself. You have so many other talents, I'm sure. Elizabeth can cook for you.
My question is, do you expect people to be able to cope, to keep up with you? Or you are, do you have any tips on how to get a bit better? Because your books, they dazzle, and they set the bar incredibly high. And I'm sort of grovelling around, very clumsy, and it doesn't work. So could you perhaps give a hint or
Well,
two?
I think kind of this is what all of us do all the time. We're just trying to sort of make it easier for everyone who's a little bit struggling, no?
I'd say.
It's kind of like 90% of the job, I'd say. Yeah?
And we all learn from our mistakes.
Yeah, but also... I'm sure that's not the case for you. I'm sure you're a fantastic or at least capable enough cook. Are you horrible? I mean, you just need, like, it's an opt-in thing. Like, you either have fun with it or you don't. You either, just want to do it with great pleasure. It fills your heart, or it doesn't, and that's okay. We all have such a bundle of talents. I'm sure you have, such a bundle of talent, and maybe you're a horrible cook. I'm not saying you are, but it could be that you are, and that's completely okay. There's, plenty of books, and everyone is here for you. We're going to cook for you all your life. I don't know if I've answered. I think I made you feel worse. Not what I wanted to do.
Itamar, I've got the answer.
Okay, thank you,
YouTube channel.
Yeah, I'm shutting up now. Thank you so much. Chetna has an amazing YouTube channel. If you follow her recipes, your food will be amazing.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say.
That's a good tip.
Thank you, Chetna. I don't know what I did there. Please, another question. Save me here.
Yeah, thank you. Linda's already referred to our expanding collection of cookery books.
Yeah.
Can't go to a certain shop in Charing Cross Road without coming out with a handful of them. But also can't go past kitchen equipment shops without coming out with all sorts of gadgets, tools, equipment. And I use them. I'm the guy who buys something and uses it. What I'd like to know from you all is, which piece of equipment, which tool or whatever in the kitchen could you not live without?
Okay, thank you so much for that. I think we got kind of like a very small glimpse into your lives. Yeah. And I think you're very lucky. I think probably your life is full with delicious food and beautiful books. Yeah. And this is what I want for all of us. So lucky you, lucky you. Piece of kit. Who's taking it?
I use my microplane like every single
that's a useful little bit. Yeah.
I hate chopping garlic. It's just something that I just don't want to do.
The worst.
So it's like microplane garlic, citrus. For me, they're just like so good, so useful. Use it every day.
Do you had one?
Yes, my Thermomixes and Robocoops.
Oh, man.
I love gadgets and blenders.
Yeah, I was sure that you're going to bring something so good. Okay. What else have we got?
I've got a chakla belan, which is a rolling board and a pin, like the Indian one, which I can't make.
The little chapati one.
Yeah, the chapati one, which I use for pastry, for all the flatbreads. I don't think I can do with that.
Once you get used to something.
I can't do it on the on the work surface. I need that little board to make it easier. Yeah.
Mine's really similar. I have a very thin rolling pin I bought from Azerbaijan, and it's for rolling flatbreads because I mainly eat flatbread, and it's just very thin and it's tapered, and I really like to use it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're really nice to have, the things that you need.
Yeah.
You need them. Guys, there's not going to be any more questions. There's not going to be any more stories. That's it. We're done. Which is how sad for all of us.
We're cooked.
We could have been here all night.
We're cooked.
But I just want to say that we kind of like we're in the British Library, and we have this amazing food season, and it's worth our while sort of taking a beat to think about why this is so important, and it's actually a really important event, and that the food writing and the work that we do and the work that these that we're reading here is actually really important. I think we all sort of we live in this world that we get so many food messages every single day, all day, every minute of the day. We're bombarded with stories and messages about food, and what we know and how we think and how we feel about food comes from these messages. And these messages, they don't necessarily come from people who want what is best for us. Mostly they come from people who want our money. They want us to pay for food, and they want us to pay for fried food and for diet drugs and for gyms and so many different things. And this stays in our head, and this is how we make choices about our bodies and about our souls and about our days and about our time and about our money. And so when we take a moment to read about food and to read different stories about food that come from people who don't want our money, who want to intrigue us, who wants to open a door for us, who wants to take us away a little bit, who wants to show a little bit of ourselves. It's so important. So take a beat to think about sort of what you read about food and cherish it, because it's you know, the reading is nourishing for you as well. I want to thank so much these wonderful people, the cream of the crop, truly, for spending this evening with us and for taking this time to choosing and reading and, you know, yapping all about it. I want to thank the amazing organizers of the food season, which is Polly, Melissa, and Angela, and Joe, who do incredible work. It makes me, you know, fills my heart with joy that my taxes are going to fund something. No? There will be books, I think, outside. Am I making this up? And these guys are going to sign them. And then you can come to them, and then you can tell them the stories that I didn't allow you to tell. Right? This is the format. This is how it works. Did I forget anything? The amazing AV team. I said Melissa.
Did you?
Did I not say Melissa?
Okay.
I said Melissa. God. And thank you guys, because it's really important that you're here. It's important for us. It validates us, and it's a really moment of beautiful communion. Thank you so much. Go forth with your evening.
Absolutely amazing. I started off this evening really hungry. I have not had supper. I'm still really hungry, but I'm filled up. It's nutritious. It's been delicious. It's just been a cornucopia of wonderful reflections and writing. Thank you so much. And Itamar, thank you so much for, at the end, reminding us that here we are at a library. I encourage you all to get readers' passes. There are 170 million items, and I bet at least half of them have something to do with food. There's amazing food writing in there.
An amazing exhibition, actually. That I saw on Saturday. It's incredible.
Beyond the Baseline, 500 years of Black British music. I want to thank Itamar for being the most wonderful host and chair and the most brilliant, eclectic panel here that have just brought to life food writing and food ideas. We've got a whole season still to happen. Please check out the rest of what is to come, especially the weekend of the 24th and the 25th, where we have back-to-back big weekend of the food season. Itamar's already said about the books, and I thought it would be really nice. We will put on the website the links and references that everybody here mentioned, so that you can all look on the food season page and look up what everybody selected, so you can all buy those books and all enjoy those wonderful readings too. Thank you so much for being an amazing audience. Thank you so much, this incredible panel, and Itamar, you just did a masterful job. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Say more nice things about me.